Human veteran saved a giant orc woman. Next day, the king ordered he marry her. The desert had a way of making everything equal. Out here, under the merciless sun that turned armor into ovens and sand into razors, it didn't matter if you were human or orc, noble or peasant, hero or coward. The desert found everyone eventually. And when it did, it gave you the same choice it gave everyone else. Die with dignity, or beg for one more breath. Marcus Ravenhill had been walking for 3 days when he found her. He almost didn't. The heat does things to your eyes. Makes you see water where there's only more sand. Makes rocks look like people and people look like... Well, Marcus had stopped trusting his eyes somewhere around hour 40. But this time, when he blinked hard and looked again, the shape was still there. Still green. Still too large to be anything but what it was. An orc. Dying. Marcus had spent 23 years killing orcs. He'd gotten good at it too. Good enough that the king himself had pinned medals on his chest. Good enough that mothers used his name to scare their children into behaving. Eat your vegetables or Marcus Ravenhill will get you. He'd thought it was funny once. Before he understood what it meant to be the thing children feared in the dark, he should have kept walking. Should have let the desert do what the desert does best. One less orc in the world meant one less threat to humanity. One less monster to worry about. But Marcus's hands were already moving toward the silver canteen at his hip, the one that had belonged to his father, the one with words worn smooth by decades of carrying. Mercy doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. The orc woman was massive even while dying. She had to be at least 7 feet tall, built like someone had taken a mountain and taught it to wear armor. Green skin marked with scars that told stories Marcus could read without asking. Battle scars, honor scars, the kind earned fighting wars that didn't end nicely. Her armor was practical, functional, the kind worn by someone who understood that looking intimidating was less important than staying alive. Though right now staying alive seemed like a losing proposition. There was blood, a lot of it, too much of it really, pooling in the sand around 3 arrow wounds, 2 in her side, 1 in her shoulder. The arrows were human make. Marcus recognized the fletching because he'd carried identical arrows for most of his adult life. His people had done this. The orc's eyes opened when his shadow fell across her face. They were amber, sharp despite the blood loss, and filled with the kind of hate Marcus had seen 1,000 times before. The hate that came from knowing you were about to die, and knowing your enemy was the last thing you'd ever see. "Finish it," she rasped in common tongue, her accent thick but understandable. "Do not insult me with mercy." Marcus knelt beside her, his knees protesting the movement. 42 years old, and his body was already keeping score of every battle, every wound, every stupid decision. He uncapped the canteen. "My father once told me that mercy isn't an insult. It's a choice." He held the canteen to her lips. "Drink." She tried to spit at him, managed mostly to drool blood on herself. "I am Kara Steelfang. I have killed 63 humans in battle. I do not drink water offered by those whose brothers I've sent to shallow graves." 63? Marcus tilted his head. "I've killed 97 orcs." Stopped counting after that because it seemed like bragging. He pressed the canteen more firmly to her lips. "Which means statistically, we're even. So drink the damn water before I waste it trying to keep you alive out of pure spite." Something flickered in those amber eyes. Not gratitude, not even acceptance. Just confusion. Like she couldn't quite figure out what category of stupid he fell into. She drank. Marcus worked for 2 hours under the brutal sun. He wasn't a healer. Healers stayed back in the medical tents and did complicated things with herbs. He was a soldier, which meant he knew how to keep people alive long enough to get them to a healer. It was a different skill set, less elegant, more improvised. Involved significantly more cursing. The arrows came out. The wounds got packed with strips torn from his own shirt because orc skin was too thick, too different from human flesh, and he didn't have proper bandages for someone her size. He used water he couldn't spare and strength he didn't have, and by the time the sun started its slow descent toward the horizon, Kara Steelfang was still breathing. "Why?" she asked, her voice stronger now, which somehow made the question worse. Marcus sat back in the sand, exhausted, sunburned, and acutely aware that he'd just saved someone who had absolutely killed people he'd probably known. "Because my father was an idiot who believed that showing mercy was worth dying for. He saved orc civilians from a fire during the burning of Westmarch. Got himself killed doing it. He stared at the canteen in his hands. I thought he was a fool, died for nothing, for enemies. And now? Now I'm apparently my father's son. He took a swig from the canteen. Turns out stupid is genetic. Kara laughed. It came out as more of a wheeze, but it was definitely a laugh. Among my people, we say that courage and stupidity often wear the same face. The difference is only clear afterward. What's the verdict? I am still alive. So either you are courageous, she paused, her expression thoughtful, or we are both about to discover you are stupid. It took another day to get her back to the nearest human settlement. Marcus had to fashion a stretcher from his spear and tent canvas, which meant he was now unarmed and exposed, dragging a 7-foot-tall orc warrior through hostile territory. If anyone asked him later why he did it, he wouldn't have a good answer. Maybe the sun had cooked his brain. Maybe 23 years of war had finally broken something essential inside him. Or maybe, and this was the possibility that scared him most, maybe he was just tired of being the thing children feared in the dark. The settlement guards saw them coming from a mile away. By the time Marcus reached the gates, there were 12 crossbows pointed at Kara's head, and a captain who looked like he'd rather shoot first and fill out paperwork later. Captain Ravenhill, the man said slowly, using Marcus's old rank like a question. That's an orc. Excellent observation, Lieutenant. Your tactical assessment skills remain sharp. That's an orc you're helping. Your ability to state the obvious is truly inspiring. Have you considered a career in philosophy? The lieutenant's face did something complicated. Sir, I need you to explain why you're bringing an enemy combatant into a human settlement instead of leaving her corpse for the buzzards like a sane person would. Marcus was so tired. Bone tired. Soul tired. The kind of tired that makes everything seem simultaneously very important and completely meaningless. Because I found her dying in the desert and I decided not to let her die. It seemed like a reasonable choice at the time. I'm open to feedback. Feedback? Sir, you've lost your mind. Possibly, but she's not dead, which means I haven't lost my medical skills. Marcus met the lieutenant's eyes. Get her to the healer. That's an order. You don't have rank anymore, sir. You retired. Then consider it a very strongly worded suggestion from a man who saved your king's life 3 times and really doesn't want to have this conversation while suffering from heat stroke. The lieutenant hesitated. Then, apparently deciding that arguing with a legend was above his pay grade, he jerked his head toward the settlement. Get her to the healer's tent, but she's under guard, and if she tries anything, she can barely walk. I think humanity is safe for now. They got Kara to the healer. The healer took one look at Marcus's improvised field medicine, muttered something about miracle and shouldn't have worked, and kicked everyone out so she could do her job properly. Marcus collapsed on a bench outside, finally allowing himself to acknowledge that every muscle in his body was screaming, his skin was peeling off in sheets, and he'd probably shortened his lifespan by several years. Worth it, though. Probably. Maybe. He'd figure out if it was worth it later, after he stopped feeling like death had filed for custody. Ravenhill. Marcus looked up to find a royal messenger, the kind with too much polish on his armor and a sealed letter that meant someone important wanted something. His stomach sank. The king requests your presence. Immediately. Can it wait until I'm not actively dying? He was very specific about the immediately part, sir. Of course he was. King Brennan the Bold had earned his title during the Battle of 3 Rivers, where he'd personally led a cavalry charge against impossible odds and somehow survived. He was 60 now, gray-bearded and sharp-eyed, the kind of ruler who could smile at you while calculating exactly how useful you'd be as a political bargaining chip. He was smiling at Marcus right now. Marcus had learned to fear that smile. Captain Ravenhill, the king said, gesturing to a chair that Marcus really wanted to sit in, but was too suspicious to actually trust. You've had an eventful journey. Your Majesty. Saved an orc's life, I hear, a warrior named Kara Steelfang. The king's fingers drummed on his throne's armrest. A tell Marcus recognized. Brennan only drummed his fingers when he was about to do something that would make everyone in the room uncomfortable. Interesting choice. It seemed right at the time, Your Majesty. Right. The king leaned forward. Marcus, may I be frank? When a king asks permission to be frank, the answer is always yes, and you're always going to hate what comes next. Of course, Your Majesty. We've been at war with the orc clans for 3 generations, thousands dead on both sides, resources drained, land scorched. And for what? Because humans think orcs are monsters, and orcs think humans are weak. Meanwhile, The bodies pile up, and neither side will admit that maybe, just maybe, we're all idiots. Marcus said nothing. Saying nothing was a skill he'd perfected over years of listening to officers explain why bad ideas were actually brilliant strategy. I want peace, Marcus. Real peace. Not a truce that lasts until someone's cousin gets drunk and starts the next war. But peace requires symbols, gestures, something dramatic enough to make both sides pause and think. The king's smile widened. Something like a respected human war hero marrying an orc warrior as a sign of unity between our peoples. The room tilted. Marcus grabbed the chair he'd been too suspicious to sit in. Your Majesty, you saved her life. That's already the hardest part. Now you just have to marry her. I saved her because it was the right thing to do, not because I wanted to. Marcus, the king's voice lost all warmth. I am not asking. Kara Steelfang is cousin to Chakra Warbraid, matriarch of the Steelfang clan. Through her, I can negotiate with the orc tribes. Through you, I can show my people that even our greatest warriors can choose peace. This marriage will end the war, or start a civil war among humans who think I'm a traitor. Possibly. The king nodded. But that's a problem for tomorrow. Today's problem is getting you to agree. And if I refuse? The king's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that reminded Marcus why this man had survived 6 assassination attempts and outlasted 3 rival claimants to the throne. Then I'll find someone else, someone less qualified, someone who might accidentally say the wrong thing, or make the wrong gesture, or start another war instead of ending one. And all those deaths will be on your conscience, Marcus, because you had the chance to stop it and chose not to. Marcus felt the weight of those words settle on his shoulders like armor he couldn't take off. The king was right, and Marcus hated him for it. Hated him for being smart enough to know exactly which guilt to leverage, which wound to press on. She'll never agree, Marcus said finally. Oh, she already has. Her cousin negotiated terms an hour ago. The king pulled out a scroll. Kara Steelfang has agreed to marry you as a condition of peace between the Steelfang clan and the human kingdom. She'll hate it. You'll hate it. But you'll both do it because the alternative is more war, and both of you have seen enough war to last several lifetimes. This is insane. This is politics. The king stood. The ceremony is in 3 days. I suggest you meet your bride and figure out how to not kill each other before then. Dismissed. Marcus walked out of the throne room feeling like he'd been conscripted into a war he didn't want to fight, commanded by a general who didn't care if he survived. But then again, that was just another Tuesday in the army. They brought Kara to meet him in a chamber that was trying too hard to be neutral, half decorated with human tapestries, half with orc banners, all of it looking like a compromise no one was happy about. Kara looked better than she had in the desert, which wasn't saying much. She was upright at least, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed and an expression that suggested she was mentally calculating how many humans she could kill before the guards took her down. You, she said when she saw Marcus. Me, he agreed. They're forcing us to marry. So I've been informed. I have killed 63 humans. You have killed 97 orcs. She pushed off from the wall, favoring her wounded side. And now we're expected to share a bed and pretend this is anything other than humiliation. I saved your life. I didn't ask you to. The roar rattled the windows. Kara took a breath, visibly controlling herself. Among my people, a life debt is sacred. I owe you. But this is not honor. This is politics wearing honor's skin. Marcus understood. God, did he understand? My father died saving orc civilians. I spent 20 years thinking he was a fool, wondering why he'd throw his life away for enemies. He met her eyes. I finally understood in that desert, when I gave you water, when I pulled those arrows out. I wasn't trying to create some political alliance. I just didn't want to be the kind of person who lets someone die when I could save them. And now we both pay for your mercy. Apparently. They stood in silence. Not comfortable silence. The kind of silence that happens when 2 people who should be enemies are forced to acknowledge they're both equally trapped. What do we do? Kara asked finally. Marcus thought about it. About the king's threat. About the war that would continue if they refused. About the fact that 63 humans and 97 orcs were already dead, and nothing they did would bring any of them back. We survive, he said, like we've always done. We survive, and we figure it out as we go. That's a terrible plan. You got a better one? Kara's laugh was bitter. No. which is the only reason I'm not breaking your neck right now. I appreciate your restraint. Don't. I might change my mind. The ceremony happened on a cold morning that felt too symbolic. Autumn sliding into winter, warmth giving way to frost, everything changing whether you wanted it to or not. Brother Simeon performed the rites, his hands shaking so badly that he nearly dropped the ceremonial rings twice. He'd survived an orc raid 30 years ago and still woke up screaming sometimes, but he was the only holy man willing to perform a marriage between a human and an orc. That took a specific kind of courage, or maybe desperation. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. Marcus wore his dress uniform. Kara wore traditional orc ceremonial armor. Leather and steel marked with symbols Marcus couldn't read but understood meant something important. Do you, Marcus Ravenhill, take this woman as your wife to honor and protect in war and peace? I do. The words felt like giving up, or maybe like choosing. He wasn't sure there was a difference anymore. Do you, Kara Steelfang, take this man as your husband to honor and protect in war and peace? Kara's jaw clenched. Her amber eyes fixed on Marcus with something that might have been rage, or might have been grief, or might have been both. I do. The rings went on. The vows were spoken. Brother Simeon declared them married, and somewhere in the crowd, someone booed. Welcome to peace, Marcus thought. It looks a lot like war with better paperwork. The first week was a competition to see who could be more miserable in close quarters. Marcus won by virtue of having a smaller threshold for petty revenge. He, accidentally, kept scheduling meetings during times when Kara was trying to pray to her ancestors, and she, accidentally, kept sharpening her weapons at 3 in the morning when he was trying to sleep. They spoke only when necessary, ate meals in silence, and occupied opposite sides of their assigned chambers like prisoners sharing a cell. It was Lady Helena who finally called Marcus out on it. His sister had always been too observant for anyone's comfort. She saw things people tried to hide, understood contexts people didn't want explained. She found Marcus in the palace gardens, staring at nothing and feeling sorry for himself. You look like you're planning a funeral, Helena said, sitting beside him uninvited. Maybe I am. Whose? Mine. My life as I knew it. Take your pick. Helena was quiet for a moment, studying him with the kind of attention that made Marcus wish he'd learned to lie better. Tell me about Kara. She's an orc. She hates me. We're married. That's the whole story. That's the summary. I want the story. She pulled out one of her pressed flowers. This one from the battlefield at Crescent Vale, where Marcus had led a suicidal charge and somehow lived. Every battlefield grows flowers eventually, even the worst ones. You taught me that. Marcus sighed. She's not what I expected. Orcs aren't supposed to be complicated. They're supposed to be monsters. Simple, easy to categorize. He rubbed his face. But she prays to her ancestors every morning. She has nightmares. I hear her through the wall, speaking in Orcish, crying for people who are gone. She carries a necklace made from her brother's tusk. He died in battle. Against humans. Did you? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Marcus felt sick. I killed 97 orcs before I stopped counting, Helena. Any one of them could have been someone's brother, father, son. I just never had to look at their family afterward. And now you do. Now I do. Helena was quiet, turning the pressed flower in her hands. Do you know why I collect these? These flowers from places where you fought? To remember? To remind myself that death isn't the end of the story. That even the worst places can grow something beautiful again. She pressed the flower into his hand. You're in a terrible place right now. Both of you are. But that doesn't mean nothing beautiful can grow from it. You're an optimist. I'm a realist who refuses to give up. There's a difference. She stood, brushing dirt from her dress. Talk to her, Marcus. Actually talk to her. You might be surprised what you find. Marcus found Kara on the battlements that night. She was standing at the edge, looking out at the mountains where the orc territories began, her expression distant. You hate it here, Marcus said. She didn't jump, didn't even turn. The stones are wrong, too smooth, too carefully placed. Among my people we build with what the earth gives us. Rough stone, unfinished wood. We let the cracks show because hiding imperfection is dishonest. She finally looked at him. Everything here is hidden, painted over, made to look perfect when it's not. That's humanity in general. We're very good at pretending. Is that what we're doing? Pretending. Marcus leaned against the battlement beside her. I don't know what we're doing. I just know I'm tired of fighting. You killed 97 of my people. You killed 63 of mine. Does that make us even? No, it makes us both murderers who were following orders. He pulled out the silver canteen, studied the worn inscription. My father died saving Orc civilians. I thought he was weak. That mercy made him a fool. What do you think now? I think he understood something I didn't. That every person we kill doesn't just erase one life. It erases all the connections to that life. All the people who loved them, needed them, remembered them. Marcus handed her the canteen. When I gave you water in the desert, I wasn't thinking about politics or peace. I was thinking that if I let you die, I'd be the kind of person my father would be ashamed of. Kara took the canteen, read the inscription. Her lips moved silently as she translated the words. Mercy doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Ironic, considering orcs probably understand mercy better than we do. What makes you say that? Because you're here. You could have refused the marriage, started another war, died with honor. But you didn't. You chose this humiliation, this imprisonment, because you knew it would save lives. He met her eyes. That's not weakness. That's the hardest kind of strength. Kara's expression shifted. Something raw and unguarded crossing her face before she could hide it. My brother died fighting humans. His name was Rogash. He was 17, young, stupid. Thought war was glorious. Her voice cracked. He died screaming for our mother. I found his body 3 days later, half buried in mud, already picked over by carrion birds. Kara, don't apologize. Don't tell me it wasn't my fault. I know whose fault it is. It's all our faults. Every human who picked up a sword. Every orc who picked up an axe. We're all responsible for the bodies we've made. She clutched the canteen like it was the only solid thing in the world. I killed 63 humans. Every single one had a name, a family, a Rogash who would miss them. They stood in silence, 2 people carrying more weight than any spine should bear. I can't change the past, Marcus said finally. Can't bring back your brother or the 97 orcs I killed or anyone else. But maybe we can change what comes next. How? I don't know. But standing here hating each other doesn't bring anyone back. It just makes more bodies. He held out his hand. Truce. Not peace, not forgiveness. Just truce. We stopped fighting each other long enough to figure out if this insane plan might actually work. Kara looked at his hand like it was a trap. Maybe it was. Maybe they were both walking into traps they couldn't see yet, and this would end in blood like everything else. But she took his hand anyway. Her grip could have crushed stone, but it didn't crush him. Truce, she said. It was a start. The truce held for exactly 4 days before someone tried to kill them. They were leaving the palace library. Kara had been teaching Marcus to read Orcish, which consisted mostly of her laughing at his pronunciation and him learning that Orcish insults were far more creative than human ones, when the crossbow bolt whistled past Marcus's ear and embedded itself in the doorframe. Marcus's training kicked in before his brain caught up. He tackled Kara sideways, both of them hitting the floor hard as 2 more bolts punched through the space they'd occupied seconds before. "Assassins!" someone screamed. Guards converged. Kara rolled to her feet with frightening speed for someone who still had healing arrow wounds, her hand going to a dagger Marcus hadn't known she was carrying. "Stay down," Marcus hissed. "I am not a human woman who faints at danger." "I'm aware. I'm trying to keep you from getting shot, you stubborn." A 4th bolt sailed between them, close enough that Marcus felt the wind of its passage. The guards caught the assassin 2 corridors away. A human man, middle-aged, wearing the kind of clothes that said, "I'm nobody important," while his hand said, "I've used a crossbow professionally for years." His face was twisted with hatred so pure it looked like pain. "Monster lover!" he spat at Marcus. "Traitor! You were a hero, and you threw it away for a green-skinned beast." Marcus punched him. Not hard enough to kill, just hard enough to shut him up. "I was a soldier," Marcus said quietly. "I followed orders, killed who I was told to kill. And you know what that made me? A tool, a weapon someone else pointed at the enemy." He flexed his bruised knuckles. "I'm done being a weapon. I'd rather be a traitor who chooses peace than a hero who only knows how to kill." The assassin spat blood. "They'll never accept you, either of you. Humans will always see her as a monster. Orcs will always see you as weak. You've made yourselves enemies to everyone. Maybe." Kara stepped forward, her shadow falling over the assassin. "Or maybe we're just the first bridge between 2 worlds that have been at war so long they've forgotten why they started." She looked at Marcus. "And bridges are always the hardest thing to build. They interrogated the assassin, discovered he was part of a larger group, humans who saw the marriage as betrayal, who wanted the war to continue because war was all they knew. There were more of them, dozens, maybe hundreds. Peace apparently had enemies too. That night, Kara and Marcus sat together in their chambers, windows barred, guards doubled. The assassination attempt had shaken something loose between them, the pretense that they could keep each other at arm's length, that they weren't both targets now, that they weren't in this together whether they liked it or not. My cousin Chakra sent a message, Kara said, holding a letter written in Orcish script. There are orcs who want me dead too, who see me as weak, as a traitor to our kind. Join the club. We have matching death threats. Kara laughed. Not the bitter laugh from before, but something closer to real humor. In my culture, we have a saying, the wolf that walks alone starves. The wolf that joins a pack survives. You're comparing us to wolves? Wolves are loyal, protective. They fight together. She met his eyes. Maybe we need to stop thinking of ourselves as human and orc. Start thinking of ourselves as a pack of two. That's surprisingly optimistic for someone who was ready to kill me a week ago. I can be optimistic and homicidal. I contain multitudes. Marcus smiled. Actually smiled. You know what? I think this might be the best decision I've ever made. What do you mean? Agreeing to marry you, saving your life, all of it. He gestured at the barred windows, the guards outside. We're probably going to die. Both our peoples hate us. We're essentially prisoners in a palace pretending to be a symbol of peace while everyone plots how to kill us. And I'd do it again. Marcus stood, walking to the window. I'm tired, Kara. Tired of war. Tired of counting bodies. Tired of being the thing children fear. If this marriage and this insane political stunt has even a chance of ending that, then yeah, I'd do it again. Kara was quiet for a long moment. Then she stood, moving to stand beside him at the window. My brother Rogash believed in honor, in fighting well and dying well. He thought that was the best an orc could hope for. A good death in battle. Do you? I did. She touched the necklace made from his tusk. But standing here alive when I should be dead in that desert, I think maybe he had it wrong. Maybe the best we can hope for isn't a good death. Maybe it's a good reason to live. They stood together, looking out at a kingdom that wanted them dead and chose to survive anyway. The truth came out 3 weeks later, and it came out ugly. They were having dinner, an awkward affair where Marcus tried to eat human food normally, and Kara tried not to grimace at how bland it was compared to orc cuisine. When Nazug the witness, Kara's bodyguard, entered with a scroll. Nazug communicated entirely through grunts and gestures, but his meaning was clear. Kara needed to read this. Now. She opened the scroll, read it, went completely still. Kara? She looked up at Marcus, and her eyes held something that made his blood freeze. This is a battle report, from the Battle of Broken Spear, 6 years ago. Marcus's stomach dropped. He knew that battle, knew it intimately. It lists the names of orcs killed. Kara's voice was flat. Dead. It lists the human officers responsible for each death. Kara, Captain Marcus Ravenhill. She read directly from the scroll. Killed Rogash Steelfang. Age 17. Single axe wound to the chest. Died instantly. The room went silent. Marcus couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. The universe had narrowed to Kara's amber eyes, wide with a grief so absolute it looked like death itself. You killed my brother. I didn't know. You killed my brother. The roar shook the walls. Kara stood, the table crashing over. You killed him. You killed Rogash. And then you saved me? You married me? While knowing... I didn't know. Marcus was on his feet too, hands up, trying to explain something that had no explanation. I didn't read the reports afterward. I couldn't. I'd killed so many people, Kara. If I'd stopped to learn their names, I would have gone insane. You should have gone insane. You should have. Tears streamed down her face. The first time Marcus had seen her cry. He was 17. He was a child. And you killed him and walked away and never even knew his name. You're right. You're absolutely right. Marcus felt his own tears coming. I killed 97 orcs, and I never learned a single name because learning their names would have made them real, and I couldn't afford for them to be real. I couldn't afford to be a murderer. I had to be a soldier. What's the difference? There isn't one. That's the problem. Marcus sank back into his chair. I'm sorry. I know sorry doesn't fix anything, doesn't bring him back, doesn't make this right. But I'm sorry. Kara stood over him, shaking with rage and grief. Her hand went to her belt, where she kept a dagger. Marcus saw the movement, made no move to stop it. If she killed him, he'd deserve it. She pulled the dagger, held it, stared at him with eyes full of hate and pain and something else, something that might have been understanding or might have been the moment before rage consumes everything. My brother died because he was in a war he didn't start, she said finally. Because humans and orcs have been killing each other for so long that 17-year-old boys think glory is found on the end of a spear. She lowered the dagger. You didn't start that war. You just fought in it. Like I did. Like Rogash did. That doesn't make it better. No, it doesn't. She sheathed the dagger. But killing you won't bring him back. And it'll make me exactly what humans think orcs are. Murderers who choose violence over everything else. So what do? I don't know. Kara walked to the door, paused. I need time, space. I can't look at you right now and not see Rogash dying. I understand. Do you? Do you really? She laughed, bitter and broken. Because I don't. I don't understand anything anymore. She left. Nazug followed, giving Marcus a look that clearly communicated, if you hurt her again, I'll kill you slowly. Fair enough. 3 days passed. 3 days of Kara refusing to see him, speak to him, acknowledge his existence. Marcus understood, gave her space, tried not to think about the fact that every moment of silence was another moment for the wound to deepen, for the hate to calcify into something permanent. On the 4th day, Lady Helena found him in the chapel where Brother Simeon was preparing for evening prayers. She's leaving, Helena said without preamble. What? Kara. She's packing. Says she's going back to the Orc territories, that the marriage is over. Helena grabbed his arm. You need to stop her. She has every right to leave. She does, but you have every right to fight for this. Helena's grip tightened. You love her. I barely know her. Liar, you know her better than you've known anyone. You know what she's lost, what she's afraid of, what she needs. Helena pulled him toward the door. And she knows you. That's why she's running. Because staying means forgiving you. And forgiving you means admitting that maybe enemies can become something else. Marcus ran. He found Kara in their chambers, bags packed, wearing traveling armor. Nazug stood guard, looking at Marcus like he was deciding which bones to break first. Don't go, Marcus said. Give me one reason to stay. Because I love you. Kara froze, turned, stared at him like he'd just spoken in a language that shouldn't exist. You, what? I love you. I know it's insane. I know we've only been married 3 weeks. I know I killed your brother and that's unforgivable. But I love you anyway. Marcus stepped closer. I love the way you pray to your ancestors every morning. I love how you sharpen your weapons when you're anxious. I love that you called me stupid for saving you while simultaneously being grateful I did. I love that you're trying to build peace even though it means everyone hates us. You killed Rogash. I did. And I'll carry that for the rest of my life. I'll never ask you to forgive that. He pulled out the silver canteen. But my father's dying words were, mercy doesn't make you weak. He died saving people who were supposed to be his enemies. I used to think he was a fool. Now I think he was the bravest man I've ever known. What's your point? My point is that we can keep being enemies. Keep fighting. Keep adding to the pile of bodies. Marcus held out the canteen. Or we can choose something different, something harder. We can choose to be the bridge between 2 worlds at war. And maybe, we can make sure that no more 17-year-old boys die for a war they didn't start. Kara took the canteen, held it, studied the inscription like it held the answer to a question she hadn't asked yet. I will always miss my brother, she said finally. Always mourn him. Always wish you hadn't been the one. I know, but you're right. About the war, about the bridge. She met his eyes. About choosing something different. So you'll stay. I'll stay. Not because I've forgiven you, but because staying is harder than leaving, and I've never walked away from hard things. She pressed the canteen back into his hands. Your father was right. Mercy doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Or orc, or whatever we're becoming. Marcus pulled her into a hug. She resisted for half a second, then melted into it, her massive frame shaking with sobs she'd been holding back for days. I hate you, she whispered. I know. I hate that I don't hate you enough to leave. I know. I hate that you're making me hope this might actually work. I know. Marcus held her tighter. I hate it too. Hope is terrifying. They stood like that for a long time. Two people who should be enemies learning how to be something else entirely. The king summoned them a week later. This time his throne room was filled with representatives, human nobles on one side, orc chieftains on the other, everyone looking uncomfortable and armed. It has come to my attention, King Brennan said carefully, that this marriage has complications. We're aware, Your Majesty, Marcus said. Yes? Well, the king gestured to a human lord Marcus didn't recognize. Lord Pemberton has raised concerns that this union is not legitimate, that an orc and a human cannot truly be married in the eyes of God. Lord Pemberton stood, his face flushed with self-righteousness. It's an abomination, a mockery of sacred vows. This marriage should be annulled. From the orc side, a scarred warrior rose. Marcus recognized the clan markings, Ironhide clan, known for being particularly traditional. The Ironhide clan agrees. Kara Steelfang has dishonored herself by lying with a human. This marriage is invalid by orc law. Murmurs of agreement from both sides. Marcus felt the carefully constructed peace beginning to crack. Then Chakra Warbraid stood. She was smaller than Kara, but somehow more intimidating, like a thunderstorm compressed into flesh and bone. The Steelfang clan recognizes this marriage. Kara has honored her commitment, shown courage, chosen peace over pride. Her eyes swept the room. That's more than most of you cowards have done. Cowards, Lord Pemberton sputtered. How dare you want war because war is safe? Chakra continued. War is easy. You point at the enemy and fight. Peace? Peace is hard. Peace requires you to see the enemy as a person, to question everything you've been taught, to admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been wrong. The orc speaks truth. Brother Simeon stepped forward, his trembling hands clasped tight. I have survived orc attacks, lost family to orc raids. But I officiated this marriage because I believe that God's mercy is larger than our hatred. And if an old man who wakes screaming from nightmares about orcs can find it in himself to bless this union, then perhaps the rest of you can find the courage to try. The room erupted into arguments. Humans shouting at orcs. Orcs shouting at humans. Everyone shouting at everyone. King Brennan let it happen for exactly 30 seconds. Then he slammed his scepter against the floor hard enough to crack stone. Enough. Silence. This marriage stands. Not because it's comfortable, not because everyone agrees, but because it's the first step toward peace, and I will not sacrifice peace for your prejudice. He looked at Marcus and Kara. Stand together. They did. Marcus took Kara's hand. She squeezed hard enough to hurt. You see this? The king gestured at their joined hands. This is what victory looks like. Not armies clashing, not territories won, but two people who have every reason to hate each other choosing something else. That's bravery. That's honor. That's what I want my kingdom to stand for. Your Majesty, Lord Pemberton tried again. The people will follow my lead, or they can leave. The king's expression was granite. I'm done watching young men die for old men's pride. This marriage represents our future. Anyone who can't accept that can take their objections and... He paused, glanced at Brother Simeon. Respectfully depart. The orc warrior from the Ironhide clan growled. The Ironhide clan will never recognize this union. Then the Steelfang clan will never trade with the Ironhide clan. Chakra shot back. Let's see how you manage without our steel and grain. I give you 3 months before you're begging. The meeting dissolved into tense negotiations. Marcus and Kara stood at the center of it all, holding hands, being discussed like they weren't even there. You know, Kara whispered, I think we just became the most important pawns in history. Pawns can become queens in chess, Marcus whispered back. I don't play chess. I'll teach you. It's very strategic. Lots of killing pieces. I like it already. Despite everything, the tension, the hatred, the very real possibility that someone in this room would try to kill them before the day was out, Marcus found himself smiling. They left the throne room together, passing through guards and nobles and chieftains who all looked at them like they were watching a strange new species evolve in real time. Outside, the sun was setting. Marcus pulled out his father's canteen, took a drink, passed it to Kara. To mercy, he said. To mercy, she agreed, and to being too stubborn to die. I'll drink to that. The attacks continued. Not assassinations. The king had made clear that anyone who harmed them would face his wrath. But smaller things, harder things, human servants who wouldn't serve Kara, orc warriors who spat at Marcus's feet, whispered insults, deliberate isolation, the slow, grinding cruelty of people who couldn't kill you but could make sure you knew you weren't welcome. But something else happened too. Slowly, quietly, a human soldier approached Marcus one morning, shy and nervous. "Captain Ravenhill, I wanted to thank you for what you're doing. My son was killed by orcs. I thought I'd never stop hating them. But seeing you and your wife, it made me think, maybe there's another way." An orc merchant came to Kara with a gift, a weapon forged in the orc style but sized for human hands. "For your husband," she said, "so he can defend what matters." Lady Helena's pressed flower collection grew to include specimens from the palace gardens where Marcus and Kara walked together. "New battlefields," she said when she showed them. "The kind where the only casualties are old prejudices." Nazug the witness started teaching Marcus basic orc sign language. Slowly, patiently, with the infinite tolerance of someone who understood that communication was worth the effort. And Kara and Marcus learned each other. Learned that Kara sang to her ancestors when she thought no one could hear. Beautiful, haunting songs in Orcish that made Marcus's chest ache. Learned that Marcus had nightmares too, waking in cold sweats from dreams of battles he couldn't forget. Learned that they both carried more scars than showed on their skin. 6 months in, they consummated the marriage. Not because the king ordered it, not because politics demanded it, but because one night, after Kara woke screaming from a nightmare about Rogash, Marcus held her until the shaking stopped, and she looked at him with eyes that had finally moved past hate into something softer. "I don't hate you anymore," she whispered. "I know. I think I might love you instead. I know that too. That's terrifying. Love usually is." She kissed him. He kissed her back. And for the first time since the desert, since the arrows, since the impossible marriage, something felt right. The second attack came 9 months after the wedding. They were traveling to the orc territories, a diplomatic mission to negotiate trade routes. Marcus, Kara, a small guard of humans and orcs working together in a tentative alliance that could shatter at any moment. The ambush was professional, coordinated, a mix of human and orc attackers working together, because apparently extremism made strange bedfellows, crossbow bolts, arrows, a charge from both sides designed to overwhelm their guard and kill the walking symbols of peace. Marcus drew his sword, the one the orc merchant had given him, perfectly weighted for his grip. Kara drew her axes, the ones marked with her clan symbols. They fought back to back, human and orc, husband and wife, moving like they'd trained together for years, even though they'd only practiced a handful of times. An attacker charged Marcus. Kara's axe took him in the chest before Marcus even saw him coming. An archer aimed at Kara. Marcus's sword cut the arrow mid-flight. They were magnificent. They were unstoppable. They were a pack of 2, and the wolves that walked together survived. When the dust settled, 12 attackers lay dead. 3 guards were wounded but alive, and Marcus and Kara stood in the center of it all, breathing hard, covered in blood, and very much not dead. "You saved me," Kara said, wonder in her voice. "You saved me first. This is going to become a competition, isn't it?" "Probably." Nazug approached, signing something elaborate. Kara laughed. Real, genuine laughter. "What did he say?" Marcus asked. "He says we fight like orcs," which, coming from him, is the highest compliment possible. She wiped blood from her axe. "I think you're officially part of the pack now." "I'm honored." Also terrified, mostly honored. They made it to the orc territories, met with the clan leaders, negotiated trade routes, proved that humans and orcs could work together without immediately murdering each other. It was a small victory. Tiny, really, in the scope of history. But it was theirs. A year after the marriage, Kara discovered she was pregnant. The news sent shockwaves through both kingdoms. A human-orc child, impossible by all previous understanding. A living symbol of unity, or, depending on who you asked, an abomination that proved the marriage should never have happened. Marcus found Kara on the battlements, their spot now, where they came to think and talk and exist away from the endless political circus their lives had become. "Are you scared?" he asked. Terrified. She put a hand on her still flat stomach. "What if our child is rejected by both sides? What if they grow up belonging nowhere? Then they'll be like us." Marcus wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hands covering hers. "And we'll make sure they know they're loved, that they matter." That being a bridge between two worlds is hard, but it's also the most important thing we could possibly be. You make it sound simple. It's not. Nothing about this is simple. He kissed her temple. "But we've survived assassination attempts, political machinations, and your cooking. We can handle raising a kid." She elbowed him. "My cooking is traditional orc fare. You're just weak. Your traditional orc fare tried to eat its way out of my stomach. That means it's working." They laughed, stood together, looked out at a kingdom that was slowly, painfully learning to change. "I miss Rogash," Kara said quietly. "I wish he could meet his nephew or niece. Wish he'd lived long enough to see that we could be more than warriors. Tell me about him." Not about how he died, about how he lived. So she did. Told Marcus about a 17-year-old orc who wanted to be a hero, who practiced with his axe until his hands bled, who sang off-key and made terrible jokes, and once tried to befriend a wolf cub and almost got mauled. Marcus told her about the 97 orcs he'd killed, not to hurt her, but to honor them, to give them names in his memory, even if he'd never known them in life. They sat together until the sun set, two people carrying the weight of history, trying to make it mean something. Their daughter was born on the first day of spring. She had Marcus's eyes and Kara's green skin and lungs that could wake the dead with their screaming. They named her Mercy Rogash Ravenhill Steelfang. Mercy, after Marcus's father, Rogash, after Kara's brother, a name that honored both their pasts and looked toward their future. The birth was controversial, obviously. Some humans saw it as proof that the marriage was legitimate. Others saw it as an abomination. Orcs were equally divided, some celebrating the first human orc child, others calling for Kara to be exiled. But when Brother Simeon blessed the baby with shaking hands, when Chakra Warbraid held her and whispered blessings in Orcish, when Lady Helena presented a pressed flower from the palace gardens where Marcus and Kara had first chosen to try, when Nazug signed something that made Kara cry happy tears, when all that happened, Marcus looked at his daughter, his wife, his impossible family, and thought, this is what victory looks like. Not perfect, not easy, but real. 5 years later, Mercy was 5 years old and absolutely unstoppable. She had her mother's strength and her father's strategic mind, which meant she could orchestrate playground rebellions with terrifying efficiency. Marcus and Kara stood in the palace gardens, watching their daughter play with a group of human and orc children, the first generation that would grow up knowing both species not as enemies but as neighbors. We did it, Kara said softly. Did what? Survived, built something, made it matter. She leaned against him. I still miss Rogash. Still wish he'd lived to see this. I know, but I think he'd be proud. That his name lives on in her. That his death wasn't meaningless. Marcus pulled out his father's canteen. Battered now, dented from the assassination attempts, worn smooth from years of carrying. The inscription was almost invisible, rubbed away by time and use. But he knew what it said. Mercy doesn't make you weak, he recited. It makes you human, Kara finished, then smiled. Or orc, or something new entirely. They watched their daughter, watched her laugh with children who would never know war the way they had, watched the first seeds of peace take root in soil fertilized by too much blood. It wasn't perfect. There were still humans who hated orcs, still orcs who hated humans, still attacks, still prejudice, still fear. But there was also this. Children playing together, merchants trading across borders, marriages between species becoming less scandalous and more normal. Change was slow, like water carving stone, imperceptible day by day, inevitable over years. Marcus and Kara wouldn't live to see the world they were building, but their daughter would, and maybe that was enough. You know, Marcus said, I used to think my father was a fool for dying to save orcs he didn't know. And now I think he understood something it took me 40 years to learn. He kissed Kara's temple. That the bravest thing we can do isn't fighting. It's choosing to love despite every reason not to. That's very philosophical for someone who once described strategy as hit things until they stop moving. I've evolved. You've gotten soft. Same thing. Mercy ran up to them, green skin flushed with exertion, Marcus's brown eyes bright with excitement. Papa, Mama, look what I made! She held up a flower crown, woven from human roses and orc blood blooms, plants that shouldn't grow together but somehow, in their daughter's hands, had created something beautiful. It's for you. Mercy said, plopping it on Kara's head. Because you're the best mama ever, even if you make weird food. Kara laughed, tears in her eyes. Thank you, little warrior. And Papa? Mercy pulled out a second crown. This is for you. Because you teach me that being strong means helping people, not hurting them. Marcus took the crown, his own eyes suspiciously wet. Where did you learn to be so wise? From you. Duh. Mercy rolled her eyes with the infinite superiority of a 5-year-old. Now come on! Nazug says he'll teach us to throw axes if we hurry. She ran off. Marcus and Kara followed at a slower pace, wearing flower crowns, holding hands, looking absolutely ridiculous and completely content. We're wearing flowers, Marcus observed. We are. And we're about to learn to throw axes from a mute orc bodyguard. Correct. Our life is very weird. It is, Kara agreed. But it's ours. And really, what more could they ask for? Behind them, the palace gardens bloomed with flowers pressed from battlefields. In the throne room, King Brennan the Bold negotiated trade agreements with orc chieftains who no longer reached for weapons first. In the streets, human and orc merchants haggled in a mixture of both languages, creating something new from something old. The war wasn't over. Wars that lasted 3 generations don't end cleanly. There were still skirmishes at borders, still extremists on both sides who rejected peace, still children being taught to hate. But there were also children like Mercy, who would grow up knowing that the enemy their grandparents fought could become family. That green skin and pale skin were just colors, not destinies. That bridges between worlds were possible, if you were brave enough to be the first stone. Marcus looked at the silver canteen one last time, then handed it to Mercy. This was your grandfather's. He died believing that mercy doesn't make you weak, that it makes you human. But I'm not just human, Mercy said, touching her green skin. I'm orc too. You're both, Kara said, kneeling beside her. And that makes you strong in ways neither of us could be alone. Is that why people stare at me? Some people stare because they're afraid of change, but others stare because you're proof that impossible things are possible. Marcus smiled. You're our impossible miracle, Mercy. Never forget that. She hugged them both, or tried to, her small arms barely wrapping around her mother's leg. I love you, Papa. I love you, Mama. We love you too, little warrior. They walked together toward the training yard, a family that shouldn't exist, that defied every law of history and prejudice and hatred, a family that chose each other, that chose peace, that chose mercy. And somewhere in the heavens, Marcus's father and Rogash Steelfang looked down at the green-skinned, brown-eyed child who carried both their names and knew their deaths had meant something after all. The bravest warriors aren't those who never feel fear. They're the ones who choose love despite it. And sometimes, love looks like giving water to your enemy in the desert. Sometimes it looks like saying vows to someone you have every reason to hate. Sometimes it looks like standing together when the whole world wants you apart. And sometimes, just sometimes, it looks like a 5-year-old girl in a flower crown, running toward a future where war is something you read about in history books, not something you live. That future was still distant, still fragile, still fought over by people who couldn't let go of old hatreds. But it was coming, slowly, like water carving stone, like flowers growing on battlefields, like mercy making us human, or orc, or whatever we're becoming. If this story moved you, please like this video and subscribe to Orcbound Tales for more stories that prove love transcends species, war, and everything we thought we knew about enemies. Because sometimes, the most powerful weapon isn't a sword, it's mercy.